the next speaker, what will present the Adyar point of view, will be Jan Kind. You learned from himself that he is a member in, what was it, 94. And so in a certain way, he is a newcomer. Because I was already in 71 a member of our society, but okay, yeah. There is always a little bit of competition in it. So, Jan, I think the floor is yours. And tell us how you of Adyar is seeing that the Theosophy and the Theosophical work.
Yep. Well, let's see how we see it. Huh? Right. So, we heard the point of view of our friend in California, Wes, and I will talk about this picture. This is a very special one. Before I start, I must say that in spite of some strange messages on the internet, I am not the official spokesman of the TS Adyar. I am not. I'm just a worker, and I do that so, with everything that I have in me. So that first of all. So whatever I share with you about the TS Adyar is what I encountered personally. I will make some statements. I will go back in history a little bit. I will give some facts and figures. And of course, as I said, it might not always be exactly that what the Adyar Society stands for. It is a personal observation, but I think I get pretty close. First of all, this is the headquarters building in Adyar, the Adyar River. And in the headquarters building, actually the photo is taken from the other side of the river. The compound is actually on the other side of the building, on the other side. So in this building is situated, mainly the administrative part, the office of the international president, the Adyar archives, and the museum. It's a wonderful place to visit. The little building that you see there on the left is the building where I lived for 1 year. And it was a beautiful place because I had a wonderful view there over the river and the building, and I was very close to the work. And, whenever our former international president, Rade Bernier, wanted me to appear in her office, she would just, she could almost open up a window and call my name, and I would just run over. This is where I actually lived, and this building was very close to my bedroom. This building you see over here was a kind of laboratory for Charles Webster Leadbeater to do his occult investigations. And I slept almost above that laboratory. I had wonderful dreams. Anyway, this is the building, and I would really like to mention to you, if you ever have the chance to come to Adyar, and that goes for all of us, the Point Loma people, the people from the United Lodge, and of course also our non-affiliated supporters. Adyar is something else, not only because of the fact that I met my wife there, which of course adds up to it, but it is really a great place, and I'm sure that when you meet up with our international vice president, Dr. Chita Satapathy, he can tell you more about it. So think about it. Years ago, really many years ago, in the Torah, I found a quote that has haunted me for the rest of my life, up until today. My Hebrew is rusty, and so is my Yivrit, but I've tried to make a translation. And before I start, I really want you to listen to this quotation, because it tells us a lot, and it also has a lot to do, with who we are, where we will be going, and what ultimately will be our end goal. The translation I made is something like this. If you know where you are from, you know where you are. And when you know where you are, you know where you will be going and to whom you ultimately have a responsibility to uphold. That's as a basic setting for my presentation. So, in order to know where we are, we have to look back. So that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes. Because, friends, whatever happened, 140 years ago, we started this amazing journey together. Let's always think about that. We started that amazing journey together with the founding of the Theosophical Society. The TS was formed in New York City in a series of 6 meetings that took place from September to November 1875. And the first meeting on September 7 was a lecture. And that lecture was so successful that the idea of forming a society was proposed. The organization of the society began in the next meeting, held on September 8. And October 30, 1875, officers were elected, with Henry Alcott as its first president, H.P. Blavatsky as its first corresponding secretary, 2 gentlemen called George Henry Feld and Seth Pentecost were the vice presidents, and William Judge was the counsel for the society. I mentioned the name of William Judge. I know our friends in the United Lodge often refer to him very respectfully as Mr. Judge. And in our circles, we say William Judge, but we do that just as respectfully, okay? So, the Theosophical Society ultimately was inaugurated on Wednesday, November 17, by Alcott's official presidential address. Alcott himself regarded the people present during the formative meetings of the Theosophical Society more as formers than as founders. He wrote, and we can read it in old diary leaves, I quote, "The society then had 16 formers, to use the most apposite term, not founders. For the stable result was a result of hard working and self-sacrifice of years, and during a part of that time, HPB and I worked quite alone in the trenches, laying a strong foundation. Most members of the TS Adyar will refer to the 3 main founders as being H.P. Blavatsky, Henry Steele Alcott, and William Judge. Now, after his 2 major co-founders departed for India to ultimately establish the international headquarters of the society in Adyar, the young attorney William Judge carried on the work of advancing interest in the society within the United States, and the results were remarkable. By 1886, he had established an American section of the International Society comprised of branches in 14 cities. Rapid growth took place, and under his guidance, by 1895, there were 102 branches with nearly 6,000 members, and that is remarkable. We all know that Madame Blavatsky and Alcott moved to India, and that started their journey inside India. Madame Blavatsky died in 1891, leaving Colonel Alcott and the English social activist Annie Besant as the principal leaders of the international movement based in Adyar, and William Judge was heading the important American section. I almost come to the end of my historical overview. We all know that during the 9th annual convention of the American section in 1895, 83 lodges voted for autonomy from the International Theosophical Society in Adyar. And Alcott interpreted this action as a secession and revoked charters of those lodges whose members reorganized under the leadership of William Judge. And the 5 American lodges that had opposed the 1895 secession retained their affiliation with the society, the International Society in Adyar. So that is where everything went into various directions. We all know that the society was influential in the founding of many later esoteric movements. I will just mention a few. It was William Westcott, who was the co-founder of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. We know of Max Heindel. He was the founder of the Rosicrucian Fellowship. Alice Bailey, she founded her own school. And an ex-co-worker of Annie Besant, Rudolf Steiner, founded the Anthroposophical Society. There were more, I will not mention them, but I think it is important to know that all these movements that sprouted from the TS aren't in any way constitutionally or otherwise connected with the TS Adyar. As from 1875, after Colonel Olcott, we had Annie Besant as its international president. Then there was George Arundel. After him came C. Jinrei Daza, who stepped down during his lifetime, but that was the first time that it happened. The father of Radha Bernier and Sri Ram was international president. Born in Scotland, John Coates. After John Coates, Radha Bernier, and now, since 2014, a young, energetic Tim Boyd, who was with us last year in Naarden. And if you follow the greetings that were sent on the internet, or when you look at the little screen here in the hall, where those greetings are presented, you also find there a wonderful greeting of Tim Boyd. Now, for the mission of the TS Adyar, two resolutions are very, very important. And I've taken them as an example to tell you how the Adyar organization moves forward. The two resolutions were passed by the General Council. First, in order to preserve the integrity and independence of the vehicle, there is the Freedom of the Society resolution. And this resolution was passed and implemented in 1949. And the Freedom of the Society resolution states that the society remains free of affiliation or identification with any other organization. And the relevant paragraph in this resolution reads as follows. Since universal brotherhood and the wisdom are undefined and unlimited, and since there is complete freedom for each and every member of the society in thought and action, the society seeks ever to maintain its own distinctive and unique character by remaining free of affiliation or identification with any other organization. Now, when well implemented, this resolution prohibits any ties among the TS Adyar and non-theosophical bodies, such as other esoteric movements and spiritual movements, political parties, and even commercial institutions. We go to the second resolution, which I'd like to read out to you. Right. It is the Freedom of Thought resolution. And really this resolution, which was implemented in 1924, really gives a very good idea on how the Adyar Society tries to leave the student by himself in order to find his way. It says as follows: approval, let me go to my text here. Here we go. Approval of its three objects is the sole condition of membership. No teacher or writer from HBB onwards, HBB Blavatsky onwards, has any authority to impose his or her teachings or opinion on members. Every member has an equal right to follow any school of thought, but has no right to force the choice on any other. Now, perhaps some of you might raise an eyebrow, but let me try to convey the idea and the purpose of this resolution. Perhaps the problem is with the word authority. Yeah? The word authority is polysemous. But if we go to a good dictionary, among other definitions, we find the following relevant senses for the word authority. Authority is power to influence or command thought, opinion, or behavior. Authority can also be a person in command. From my own observation, I think I can say that for Adyar Theosophists, HBB does or should act as providing expert guidance in theosophical matters, but not as an official decision maker, domineering and commanding all thought, opinion, or behavior. Most definitely, she is someone to respect and to consider very seriously, but not to follow blindly. She was the one who opened up the windows, reintroducing what had long been forgotten at the peak of the 19th century materialism, when we thought that we had discovered it all. She unveiled all mysteries. She brought light into the darkness and ultimately paid the highest price. There's another part that is directly related to the TS Adyar that I want to make mention of, and that is the Theosophical Order of Service. For those who are not familiar with the TOS, it is an organization that operates separately from the TS Adyar, and it goes to regions where people are in need of direct help. So we could say that next to making that available, that will make people understand what is actually wrong with us and what could be beneficial for the improvement of certain things in this world, we also go out to the problem areas. And the TS is very proud that the TOS is actually currently active in 25 countries. In some of them, it is separately constituted and legally registered body, and in others, it operates as an autonomous department of the Theosophical Society, and since last year, its international secretary is Nancy Seacrest. So I must emphasize, study is important. We need to discover why there is so much suffering in the world. But next to that, we make it possible through the TOS to go to the areas where help is needed. So that means people go to regions where there are floods or where there is a shortage of food. There are projects for clean drinking water. There are schools. And of course, I just read it in the magazine some time ago that the Italian section is even going to war zones to supply clothes. So I think it's a wonderful initiative. But where does the TS Adyar stand today? Currently, the TS Adyar is represented in 68 countries through sections, regional associations, or presidential agencies, lodges that can be directly connected to Adyar, and its membership is around 27,500. There are 982 lodges, 171 study centers, 4 federations, and in total, 39 magazines are published under the Adyar banner. Now, when we look at that figure of 27,500, you could start asking you some questions. For example, if we assume, and the total figure is not correct, but let's say, if we assume that in total there would be 40,000 people on this planet connected in any way to a theosophical vehicle, So 40,000 people on this planet connected in one way or another to a theosophical vehicle. What does that come down to? If we know that the world population is 7.3 billion people, that means that there is one theosophist to every 182,500 people on Earth. One theosophist to every 182,500 Earthlings. Now, please, perhaps you can help me out a little. What does that figure tell you? Has anybody any thought about that? Would anybody like to comment to that? Yes, Barend.
There are more theosophists outside the Theosophical societies.
That's true, yes, yes.
And not everybody who is a member of a Theosophical society is a Theosophist.
That's true.
The second thing I want to say is Church asked more or less the same question to Blavatsky in London. And she said, smoking her cigarette, you were not ordered to form a universal brotherhood, but the nucleus of it. And if the nucleus is firm, then you can collect.
Yeah.
So if we just, a few people are connected and work unitedly, and we are really theosophist, that a theosophist is somebody who acts theosophically, then we can gather the others.
Okay, Barend. That's great. Anybody else would like to comment on this figure? One theosophist for every 182,500 people. Anyone? Well, okay. I will not make it difficult. You have to work later on, you know, then we can relax. You have to roll up your sleeves. Of course, the Theosophical Society has been very influential, and it is not about numbers. The point that I was trying to get to is the responsibility that we have. We are small. Our influence was significant. But we need to realize that we have to do everything we can possibly do to keep Theosophy accessible. We are small. Actually, we are a drop on the hot plate. Let's go on with the TS Adyar. There are theosophical schools, and thanks to the hard work of Vicar Chin in the Philippines, there are some wonderful schools there. There are also some schools, and Dr. Chita Satapathy can tell you more about it, at Adyar. There are 7 theosophical publishing houses and 6 science groups, and the one in France is headed by Jacques Manich. Jacques, where are you? There he is. He is leading the group there in France. There is an esoteric school of Theosophy. And here I must underscore that it is an esoteric school and not a secret school. And it is administered separately from the Theosophical Society. And it is open to members after 2 years of active membership who are willing to abide by some basic conditions directed to a life of sincere altruism and harmless living. The largest section of the TS Adyar is the Indian one, followed by the United States, England, and Australia. But I always like to fiddle about a little bit with figures. And Linda Watts, I have determined that if you compare, you know, TS membership per head of a local population, the New Zealand section actually is the largest one, and so is the Icelandic one. So good on you, Linda.
Yeah, and I've been on to it. I've been having conversations with Australia saying, per capita, we're doing much better than you.
Okay, why don't you say that in the mic?
I just said I've been on to that. I've had conversations when I've been in Australia saying that per capita, we're working more effectively, perhaps, than you. Not that I was wanting to set up a competition.
Okay, very good. Okay, the TS Adyar is a democratic organ. And that means that most officers, general secretaries, and board members, up until the international president, are elected democratically by the membership. Some officers at headquarters in Adyar are appointed directly by the international president. So the TS Adyar is international, for sure, but it isn't strongly centralized as an organization. The national societies, we call them sections, are typically incorporated each in their own countries. So legally speaking, each section is independent of the others, although they are united in purpose and spirit. As we have seen, the freedom of thought resolution is respected and followed up on. Members of the TS Adyar study various authors representing various currents inside the TS. And it is evident that no particular author is recommended above another one, although the works of HBB for many are the starting point. Many courses have been written in different languages to help students to find their way in HBB's writings. And in lodges, many regularly come together to study the core material, Isis Unveiled, the Secret Doctrine, the Key to Theosophy, and so on. And next, to many authors worldwide, two distinguished English theosophists contributed typically and significantly worldwide. The names are Ian T. Hoskins and Geoffrey Farthing. And looking at the series of mini interviews I publish on Theosophy Forward, The Voice of the Silence, for almost all members of the TS Adyar is the #1 publication of HBB. Many Adyar theosophists have found that in particular the writings of Godfrey de Purker, Boris de Zirkov and Geoffrey Barborka, but also Robert Crosby, have helped understanding the core teachings. There are also members who are attracted to the oeuvre, to use that wonderful French word, of what I would call the clairvoyant authors, like Leadbeater and Geoffrey Hodson. Now, the literary output, volume-wise, of Annie Besant was phenomenal. Henk Spierberg once explained to me that if we had to put all her books on one shelf, you would need about 21 meters. Her output was really incredible. Publications like Thought Power and her very early work, The Ancient Wisdom, are still widely read, while In the Outer Court, by many, also by me, is considered to be one of her finest works. Also, the Mahatma letters to Synod are studied intensively, and in Adyar circles, Joy Mills, of whom we will hear much more later on during this conference, and she currently lives in Crotona, has typically contributed a lot. Other Adyar theosophists find inspiration in and are attracted to the writings of Krishnamurti, who, as I would describe him, was a speaker and writer on philosophical and spiritual subjects. In his early life, he was groomed by Annie Besant and Leadbeater to become the new world teacher, but later rejected this mantle and withdrew from the TS. A very small book, still in print and read by many, written by him, is entitled At the Feet of the Master. And K, as Krishnamurti is often referred to, wrote that when still very young, using the name of Alcyone. I come almost to my conclusion. I should share with you that also the works of William Judge are widely read in theosophical circles. If you, for example, visit the Adyar bookstore, you'll find that almost all his works were or are for sale there. And I can show it to you because, where is it? This was the first William Judge book I bought at the Adyar bookstore. And I can prove 15 rupees, right? So I make mention of that because, you know, recently on some websites in the UK, it was suggested that Adyar members were deliberately kept away from Judge and his material, and that is not true. The fact that he was not well known, or is not well known in some regions, might be also because of the fact that he passed away relatively young, and that not all his material was translated in regions like Africa or the East, the Far East, the Middle East, and all these areas where his publications were not really published as such. Well, in 2015, all in all, the TS Adyar finds itself in a transitional phase. The era of the grand leaders has come to an end, and Tim Boyd, as an international president, has already turned many pages. Now, within its infrastructure, you'll find various currents. And I know the analogy is not very original, but compare the vehicle TS Adyar with a large house containing many rooms. There are students following exclusively the teaching as they came to us through HBB. Others will further elaborate her teachings through the later authors such as Annie Besant, C. Jinrayadasa, Sri Ram, and I must also mention I.K. Taimni, just to mention a few. And for some, the works of Krishnamurti are essential in their journey towards truth. But, and I must emphasize that, the overall principle remains the freedom of thought resolution. So today, in this year, 2015, there is among many an Adyar member the yearning to reach out to the world and also to come together, as we do here, on this ITC platform, realizing that wisdom cannot flourish when no action is taken. All of us carry the same responsibility to make certain that Theosophy remains accessible for those who knock and want to set out on their own particular journey. We must construct landing strips for those who come after us. And I think it was Garrett Reek who last year referred to that in his presidential speech. It is not a matter of next year. It is not even something we can complete in 5 or 10 years to come. It is an everlasting task for decades and yes, even centuries to come. That responsibility is ours. In the very beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that Olcott preferred not to be called a founder, but a former. So all of us here, present in The Hague, could look at ourselves as being formers, not founders, formers of the Theosophical movement, a movement in motion, next to being a member or affiliate of one of the Theosophical vehicles. Sri Ram, at one time the international president of the TS Adyar, in my opinion, in a talk delivered to the Australian section in March 1970, defined the Adyar stance in a crystal clear manner when he said, and I quote, "The TS Adyar was not founded as a movement to teach people to be good in the conventional sense. That is, not to rob, not to murder, not to deceive. The TS was founded with the exalted purpose of promoting spiritual regeneration of man. But we have to understand what this regeneration means and how it is to take place. Therefore, as a worker for Theosophy, affiliated with the TS Adyar, I can say that Theosophy can never be regarded as a knowledge-based teaching. It is a wisdom-based teaching. And whether we like it or not, and by definition, wisdom cannot be categorized, it cannot be labeled, it cannot be defined. We have work to do, wisdom, we must discover it for ourselves. Thank you.